Go. Okay, chapter 4 of book 2. Chapter 1 taught us that God created the world through letters, through the letters of the alphabet. Chapter 2 taught us that this is a constant phenomenon, always and forever occurring. Chapter 3, chapter 2 is like, well, of course it has to be, because we're not talking about a regular fabrication of a bookshelf. We're talking about creation, the ultimate original creation of something from nothing. So for something to be created out of nothing,
I have a random question.
Yes.
If God created the world with the alphabet, right? Like the Hebrew alphabet.
Yeah.
How most of those rabbis, they used to speak Aramaic and not Hebrew, which this is the language they're supposed to speak, no?
That's such a good question. And in fact, you're so right. Like, even we're going to be quoting from the Zohar, which is one of the original Kabbalistic written works. And that's in the Aramaic, and I had the same question. When I was reading it today, it happens to be that I literally had the same question. Sorry, this is bothering me so much.
Why don't you take it out? Yeah, you can.
I'm trying to. That's why. Here we go. Finally, listen to me. I'm very auditorial sensitive. Okay. So, I don't know the answer to the question. I do know a couple little tidbits that this is what I'm thinking about. But first of all, Aramaic uses Hebrew letters. Actually, it's a really funny language where it's like, I think it's even some people speak Aramaic today from the Armenians. They speak a form. I don't think it's the same Aramaic that's in the Talmud.
I looked this up last
Yeah,
weekend.
that's so interesting.
Well, because of the alphabet and the same question.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so maybe you can share what you found.
Well, it's exactly what you said, that the two languages commingled.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of each.
And Aramaic has Hebrew root words, as we talked about. But also I think there's more to it spiritually. There's something along the lines of, like, for example, why is the Talmud in Aramaic? I think there's some spiritual reason. I don't want to guess, especially not as I'm being recorded, but there is something to a reason why, using the language of the time. Let's look it up. About our, of what we're building here. We're building an understanding of Hashem as best as we can, right? Because we also, our introduction explains to us how we can never really fully understand Hashem. That's impossible for us to understand as humans, because we are part of finity. We are finite. We are part of the finite creation. It would be impossible for us to understand what's beyond our scope, right? We're within it. We can't understand what's without. We're also actually going to touch upon that exact concept today again. So that's why it's important for us to remember, like, when we approach this study, we are trying to understand that which is incomprehensible. Yet we still try, because we can understand. We can be on the quest, with that humility of understanding that we won't be able to really fully grasp it and master it ever. So the chapter 2 was explaining about the sea and how, using the Spurs example with the ball in the air, right? You need that force of the athlete who's throwing it, and the kinetic energy they put into the ball to constantly keep the ball in the air. But the ball will not perpetually be in the air. Its nature is to fall. So our world is not naturally here. It doesn't stand on its own 2 feet. It needs constant energy flow from Hashem to be existing. And chapter 3 is where we ask a question. If we really, really internalize this idea that the world is so dependent on the constant flow of energy, then the question that we're left with is, how is it that this can be true, yet we are so blind and we're so unaware of it throughout our life. And we feel ourselves as so here and so existent, but we're so fleeting. Our existence is so dependent and so a result of a constant flow of energy. Why don't we see the energy as the real and our existence as the sort of fleeting dependent part? Why do we see it the other way around usually, where we see ourselves as more tangible and the energy as you have to really work to tap into it? So we're going to answer that. We're going to start answering that question today. It's going to be a lifelong answer because this is, again, we're trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. So back to this energy that Hashem is, back to the example of the sun. That's where we're going to start. So we left off in chapter 3 of visualizing the world's dependence as like a ray of the sun, where the sun has, is the source of energy, and a ray of the sun brings so much light and warmth to the world. But if you follow that ray is obviously here, because without it, the world would be dark. The world wouldn't be able to sustain, right? We need that sun's rays to be here. But if we were to follow the very real ray of the sun back all the way to the sun, would we be able to find the ray that we were living off of inside the sun?
No.
Absolutely not. The ray, it wouldn't be like, you lost your ray, where's my ray? I have all these rays everywhere. No, it wouldn't be like that. It would be sun. There wouldn't be there's no rays at all inside the sun. It's just sun. So we're using this example to understand how the energy of our world is really Hashem. It's not like Hashem and then there's energy from Hashem. We are Hashem's energy. So therefore, do we really exist at all, right? That's the question we're asking. And then we made our question even stronger because it's actually not that way. It's not that Hashem is sun over there and then sends energy out of him to us on earth, because that would actually be a heretical thing to say, because then you would be saying that sun is not here, we do not have sun, we have rays of sun here, right? But if we were to say we only have, we don't have, the exact example would be saying that we don't have Hashem here, which God forbid, right? Hashem is everywhere. You can't say that there is a space outside of Hashem. So actually, we are living within the sun. We are living inside of Hashem himself. Yet, we don't feel ourselves. We don't feel Hashem, we feel ourselves. How is that possible?
We are living inside Hashem.
Well, if Hashem is everywhere, we're in
How
Him.
about Hashem is living in us?
It's in and out, and it's like we brought the fish in the water, right?
Yes.
That example, it came back to me. Like, the fish are full of water. Like, they're in the water, and the water is in them, and they're just one with the water, right? We are one. Hashem is in us. We're out of it. Everything is Hashem. How can we feel ourselves? And this, even just pondering this question, is actually spiritual therapy for your soul. Because the soul spends its entire life in our bodies being gaslit. Right? Right.
What do you mean?
I mean that the soul is the true existence, yet its whole life inside of our bodies, it's always the thing that needs to be worked. It's always the thing that's not naturally true. Its truth is being called into question all the time, right? Because we feel our bodies more. We feel our physical matter and our physical reality more than we feel our spiritual truth. So it's constantly being gaslit on this earth, right? So it's spiritually therapeutic for us to start thinking about it this way, even if it's not going to be, as we talked about, our nature is that it's not going to ever stick in the way that will be our new paradigm without effort. It will always take us effort to bring us back to thinking in this way, but just thinking in this way right now is therapeutic. I feel seen, right? That's probably what it's feeling inside. I feel seen. Like, yeah, you realize that it isn't really about your physical reality. There's a lot more to it. And you're actually asking the right questions finally. You're finally saying, hey, wait, is physicality really there? Yeah, that's the right question to ask.
Maybe that's part of our lesson to learn to remember our soul regardless if we are in the physical world.
Exactly. And that's why it feels so good when we finally do it. Yeah. So
It's tiring.
exactly.
Yeah.
But we're gonna find that, and I'm just want to push this out there, and then we're gonna come back to it. I don't want to lose the plot, but we're gonna find that our existence is not an illusion. Okay, it is real, but is it? It's very flimsy. Our existence is very dependent. But it's not that and it's important to have this distinction, we'll come back to it. But I just wanted to say that as we're talking about this question of, wait, what's the real question to ask? Is the real question to ask, is God here? Or is the real question to ask, are we here? So let's venture to answer this question. How are we feeling ourselves if we are really, really subsumed and really dependent on the Hashem that's everywhere, making us exist?
Say that again, sorry.
How do we feel separate? How do we feel so physical? How do we feel like we even have an identity if our true identity is Hashem? And Hashem, okay, so let's get to it and you'll understand it. So, using the example of the sun, there is a verse in Psalms that goes like this, and it's at the top of our page 2. Hine ketiv, ki shemesh umagen Hashem Elokim. For a sun and its shield is God. So we're gonna take this phrase and we're gonna understand it in 2 steps. Step number 1, that the sun and its shield are both God. Let's talk about the sun and its shield, and then we're going to talk about God. So the sun and its shield. What is its shield? So I'm not sure how this translates in science. Maybe it's the ozone layer, which is really the Earth's shield, but it is still a shield from the sun. This is more spiritual. I'm talking about science for a second. The sun itself. The sun somehow has some sort of gravitational force field. The concept is that there is a filter between sun and earth. Maybe let's call it the ozone layer. Maybe let's not, because the sun is talking about the sun around the shield around the sun versus the shield around the earth. But for all intents and purposes, we do understand that if we were to have rays directly from the sun, it would be harmful to earth. Right? There is a protective layer in the Earth's atmosphere or somewhere between sun and earth that is filtering rays from the sun before it reaches earth. And the sentence from the verse from Psalms is saying that both this protective filter and the sun is both God. I'm going to leave you with that for a minute to see if you can start imagining where we're going with this. Remember our question. How can we feel in existence if we are part of Hashem? Let's imagine the sun did not have a filter. What would happen to Earth? I mean, look at Australia, right?
Burn up.
We'd burn up.
Yeah.
So if Hashem were to be giving forth his energy to us, we would not have an existence. That's why we have the question, right? Our question is coming from visualizing this overwhelming energy from Hashem. It would be Hashem. We would not have physical bodies, right? We would be Hashem. It would just be, we would have this awareness of Hashem without really being even able to imagine ourselves as separate, which we can very well imagine ourselves as separate. We feel that all the time. So obviously, there's some sort of filter going on.
Yeah, and you described in past sessions that there are people who try to be fully consumed by
Yes.
Hashem, and that's actually not what Hashem wants.
Right? And they plug themselves in so intimately with this idea. They're so one with this idea that if let's use the example from the Midrash. The Midrash says, as the Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, he said, right, there's the Ten Commandments, right? The Midrash, which is the oral Torah details of the story, tells us that actually God said the first commandment to the Jewish people directly, and their souls left their bodies because they could not handle that amount of energy and be in their bodies at the same time. And then God, the story goes, God brought them back to life and said the second commandment, and their souls left their bodies again. And then God brought them back to life, and then the Jewish people said, listen, this is great, but it's exhausting and scary. So please, Moses, would you tell us, since you're used to it, would you please hear the rest of the 8 commandments from God and then relay them? And that's how the rest of the 8. And then it goes back to actually the first 2 commandments. This is a little bit of a side point. Contain the whole Torah energetically. And the Jewish people heard those 2 commandments directly from God, which means they heard the whole Torah directly from God. Okay. But that's an illustration of too much energy means I don't have my own life anymore. I'm just going to be you, God, because it's just you.
So a prophet is someone who's like able to really connect with that energy?
More. But no created being, even the angels, are not going to have their own identity. Mm-hmm. So if you have any shred of identity, even if it's a very abstract one, it means that there's some filtering going on. Because if there was zero filtering at all, there would be zero ability for separate identity. Not abstract, not absolute, none.
Are you saying then that if we have this identity, that is kind of the filter to being were we to be not physical, if we be Hashem?
Yes, the fact that we have it.
What is the filter?
The filter creates the ability for identity.
Yeah, okay.
So just the fact that we have any bit of identity means that there is a filter filtering out the direct energy from Hashem. But what is the truth of this filter? Let's go back to this verse. Ki shemesh u'magen Hashem Elokim. Shemesh is sun. Magen, like Magen David, is a shield. So the Magen David comes from the shields, right? Mm-hmm. So the sun and the shield are both Hashem. So what does this mean? The energy flow and the shield are both godly energy equally. So it is not, because remember, imagine if the shield was not godly energy, that would be again heresy. Because that you're saying that there's something outside of God, right? But that's process of elimination. But back to the actual what is that? What was he saying? I don't know what you're saying. Beryl's listening and sending me messages.
Isn't he joining?
Yeah.
That's so funny. He's going to distract me.
Oh, wow.
Oh, not in that way, but that's cute.
Well, you just had nano.
Right, we have to, let's be cute. So, I don't know, I'm blushing. I'm blushing even more.
That's adorable.
Yeah. So, back to the sun, and it's still a safer territory. So,
you just asked what is the truth of the filter. It is God, right?
yeah, exactly. That's what the sentence is saying. A sentence is saying the sun and its shield are both God. Now we're going to unpack this further. Yeah, the sun. Yeah.
They're gluten-free.
Yes, they are.
So we only have the filter on here on Earth.
Anywhere that has some shred of identity has some filtering going on. So remember we talked about the 4 worlds? So even the first world has some sort of shield. more in the second world, more in the third world, more in the fourth world. This is all going to be repetitive and repetitious to what everything we've learned, because it's the same truth. We're unpacking it different ways. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the four worlds. Remember the word symptom? That's next. Okay, so let's unpack this even further. Remember, we said stage one was talking about sun and shield. Now let's talk about Hashem. How does the verse describe Hashem? With two words. Hashem, Elohim. The verse says that the sun, Shemesh, Umagen, and its shield are God, Hashem, Elohim. Why does it not just say one word for God? The sun and its shield are God, Hashem. Let's take a guess. What do you think is going on here? We're going to have a parallel. Shemesh is the name Hashem. Magen, shield, is expressed through the name Elohim. And they're both God. The names of God are not talking about, they're not separating God himself. They're different, they express the different ways Hashem interacts with the world. So we're not saying there's, God forbid, multiplicity in Hashem. That's again heresy. We're saying it's one Hashem, and Hashem expresses himself through the name Yud, and then Hey, and then Vav, and then Hey, which we're so careful not even to pronounce or write in its correct order. Like, we're very careful with this name. And Elohim, the name Elohim. The name Hashem expresses flow, energetic flow. And let's talk about that before we go to Elohim.
Hashem?
Yeah, the name Hashem.
Okay.
The name Hashem is spelled Yud with a dash because we don't write it out. Yud and dash Hey, dash Vav, dash Hey. And that's important because it's a play on words, but no, it's not. It's really the name describes. So Hey, Vav, Hey means Hoveh, means is, right? Hoveh is present tense, right? So Haya is past tense, Hoveh is present tense, Yihiyeh is future tense. It's all existence, right? Past existence, present existence, it's all, right? Because Hashem is constantly making the world exist. And the Yud in the front, the Tanya talks about being, it's funny because I just studied this in Chumash with my son Mendel. It came up, the same grammatical structure came up, and Rashi talks about it. This Yud in the front is simply just he will be. But in this case, it's not just he will be, it's he always is. It's a continuous word. So the word Hashem, Yud and then Hey and then Vav and the Hey, really means that Hashem is describing this phenomena that Hashem is constantly wheeling the world into Hoveh, into existence. Mehaveh, he is existing. He's causing this existence. He's isifying, as Rabbi Freeman on Chabad.org made up that word. It's a great word. Isifying, right? So, so there's this energy of Hashem that is constantly the flow energy. Is the same God as the Elohim. Elohim, so this is really fun. I need a Siddur. Okay. In the Siddur, I'm going to go on.
We call Havaya is the same as Hashem?
Yes, Havaya. The reason why Havaya is a thing is because it's taking the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey, and it's scrambling up the order so that you can say it. Okay? Havaya. Right? Havaya means Hashem. Thank you. It's good. Wow, I'm so fortunate. I opened up this Siddur to the page I needed.
Wow.
Oh my.
The Amida.
The flow is
That's
happening.
right. There's our energetic flow. So
Page turned itself. God gave you the energy to open it.
okay, I'll let it happen. I won't say, it's also because it uses pages all the time. Okay, so here we have the Amida. And we start out the Amida. It might be familiar to you. Oh, goodness. Yeah, here it is. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu ve'Elokei avotenu Elokei Avraham Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov. And then what does it say? Hakel, the God, Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora. Okay, so this Gadol and Gibor, what is Gibor?
Hero.
Same root word as Gevura.
Oh.
Gibor means strong, warrior, right? Gevura is
Hero.
strength, hero, right? What's the word before that? Gadol, Hagadol, the great, like Nes Gadol, Hayasham, right? So we have this, and this comes up in other prayers as well. There's the Nishmas, which I love, one of my favorite prayers. I'll see if I can find that as I'm talking. But the Gadol is Havaya, Hashem, and the Gibor is obviously the Gevura, same root word. So let's talk about the Gadol being Hashem. The Gadol, why is greatness? Gadol is greatness. It's greatness because we're talking about this overt, outright. What's the word? Like, it's
Enormity.
Yes, and it's also like it's available. It's outward. That's the word I'm looking for. Outward. Okay? It's an outward energy. It's great. We can look at it and we can say, "Whoa, that is great." This ability for Hashem to flow out energy constantly to create something from nothing and isify, right? That is great. That's Gadol. And the Gevura is the Gibor, the strong. And we only start talking about Gevura today. Gevura is one of my favorite phenomenons to teach. I love it. I think it's so cool. Because we usually use it. Here, let's see. I found the prayer that I'm looking for. Okay, I'll come back to it when I'm ready. So, the Gevura, let's go back to my notes. Okay. The Gevura is all about limiting. Now let's talk about this idea of limiting. Why is it called strength? I mean, what came to mind is like, maybe it's because it's current in my life, but like strength training is resistance training, right? Having a little bit of resistance is an act of strength, and it creates strength. It's, if you have a constant flow of energy, it's okay, when you talk about it, let's say with parenting, it's not necessarily good for a child, but in the case of the world, it doesn't even create a world. Because it's without, because again, this constant flow of energy is so overwhelming that it doesn't make space for any separate existence. You have to create some boundaries and some restriction and some restriction to the flow so that there can be some shape, some form, and then there's a world.
Is it linked to the finite?
Absolutely. Well, to create the illusion of finite, yes, absolutely. But the beauty, what we're getting at, and we're going to talk about Gevura more and more and more, but what I want, what's today's understanding? Today's understanding that I don't want to lose sight of is the fact that they're both Hashem. So now let's unpack that. So before we unpack that, the Tanya wants to give us a little what do you call it? A prerequisite understanding, that a reminder that we'll never fully understand. That we'll never fully understand God's sefirot, God's attributes, because we're starting to unpack his attributes, chesed, gevura. Next week we'll talk about tiferet. And it's important to understand that God is one with his attributes, yet we're going to talk about later in the book 2 that doesn't mean that he has different parts somehow, which is really kind of impossible to understand, yet it is the truth, it's the case. That God is one with his attributes, yet he's not, but it doesn't mean that he can be divided into parts. And we will never, we have attributes ourselves that are modeled after God because we're created in his image. And that's why, and we're going to use that to try and start understanding. But we need to understand that we'll never really understand that his attributes are not our attributes. They're really not one and the same. So we can't just say, oh yeah, I get this because I've got Gevurah. Yeah, we do have Gevurah and we can understand a bit, but let's just understand you're finite, God's infinite is not the same thing. Okay? So that's our disclaimers type of, reminder to remember when we embark on this journey. So Hashem and Elohim are both God. Because they're both equal energy. It isn't that Hashem, the Havaya, is this outward flow of energy and the Elohim is stopping it. Well, or the Elohim is just the limitation, or Hashem got tired, God forbid, and then that's when, Elohim comes in to just sort of rest. No. Elohim is energy and Havaya is energy, and they're working together to create the world. Just the same way, it is impossible to understand Havaya being constantly fully creating the world and this idea of constant flow of energy, something from nothing energy. It is also impossible to understand the filter of it. Right? The filter and Hashem are both, the filter and the sun are both Hashem. So kind of the way I would start describing it is as like when you have design or art, you've got white, you've got shadows and light. The shadows are just as important as the light. Or you have like negative space in a graphic design. Like the negative space is just as important, and where exactly you put it is intentional. It's not random. It's not the lack thereof of design. Oh, it's actually part of the design to have that negative space there. Another way I'd like to describe it is, like this is my own thing I came up with, so maybe it isn't perfect, but it's not like, how you have some handles of water, like a faucet, and some of them show like more to the right, more to the left, right, but some faucets are really descriptive of what's going on because they have two, of hot water and a cold water. And if you want to create warm, it's not that you can't only just have less hot water, because you're just going to have less of the hot water. And if you want to put some warmth into your cold water, and you're living in Chicago and it's freezing cold, right? You can't I'll just put less cold water because I want it to be less cold. It doesn't work that way. You'll just get a slower stream of freezing cold water. If you want warm, you need to have just the right amount of cold, just the right amount of hot, and they're both equally important. And they're both flowing. So they're both Hashem's energy. One is a limiting energy, and one is a outward flow energy. It's abstract, right? But I like this hot and cold because it's a little bit illustrative of both factors needing to be an active flow of energy, not just one being less of the other, or one making the other come less. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we're answering our question. We're saying, how do we feel a separate existence? Because of the filter. But the filter is Hashem. So we are within Hashem. We're living in the sun. We're living in God. Right? God is everywhere, a part of us, in us, through us. Yet he specifically created this energy of Gevurah. He created the world through this energy of Gevurah so that we would have just the right amount of flow, just the right amount of filter, and then boom, we feel like an existence. Because we're filtered, right? We're deliberately filtered. We're filtered by design.
The filter is the shield, is Gevurah.
Actually, yeah, but the filter is our letters. The Gevurah is the letters. Okay, so we're bringing it all back together. The energy.
This I don't get.
We're about to explain it. That was just the. Okay. Well, actually, bringing it back to Chesed and Gevurah, right? What is happening when a teacher teaches, right? They've got to. especially like a professor, right? When they have like, I'm more like reading and explaining it. But if the Alter Rebbe himself, right? If he shared all of his knowledge without a filter, we would be lost. But he specifically filtered step by step. On chapter 1, he only taught us one, there was one understanding. Chapter 2 is another understanding. He's filtering out his wisdom so that we'll be able to understand it. And that's a major example for Gvura that is recurring throughout all works of Chassidus, right? This idea of a teacher and a student is one of the main analogies to use to describe this idea of Chesed and Gvura. Energy flow and restriction, so that there can be an experience of the receiver. Right? Because if the teacher doesn't filter, the receiver's lost. The receiver doesn't have an experience, is robbed of an experience because it's just over their head. So the flow, back to the letters, right? The flow is the energy that Hashem gives forth with the chesed energy through the letters, which is the Gevura energy. Because let's use our mouth, right? Our mouth is the 5, remember we talked about the 5 organs of our mouth. We've got the palate, the tongue, the lips, the back of the throat, and the teeth. These are 5 organs of speech, right? And there's 5 Gevuras. So when we use our mouth to speak, what are we doing? We're restricting airflow. But we shouldn't have restriction. We should have full airflow. But then it would just sound like there would be no words. Right? All that breath would not create words if we're not restricting it with our 5 Gevuras. So the 5 Gevuras, which some letters, there's the letters of the alphabet, and they're grouped within those 5 because there's the letters that are formed with the mouth, with the lips. Mem, pe. There's the letters that are formed with the tongue. Lamed, sin, right? Tough. There's the letters that are formed with the teeth. Shin. There's the letters that are formed with the throat. Groniot, ayin, het, right?
Especially
and there's the letters
from
from
Morocco.
Yes,
Yeah,
and that's why they have the Yemenites are known to have the most precise pronunciation, and the palate letters like what's a palate letter? That's a harder one. Aleph, I think. Kaf, yes, ka, exactly.
Something we study in voice.
Yeah.
What
You would
you're
know this.
talking
You'd be an expert on this. So kaf exactly is a palate letter. So we're using our mouth to restrict the airflow. So our mouth, right, is considered the 5 gevuras because they're restricting, but by design, deliberately, intentionally restricting so that we can communicate and the receiver can actually receive what we're trying to say. If we didn't restrict, it would just be breath, right? And if we didn't restrict our thought stream, then people wouldn't be able to understand what we're trying to say, right? We have to create a structure to what we're trying to explain, right? When we're trying to write a book or whatever, right? Or just, or just talk to a friend or talk about our day or explain a concept, right? You've got to put it in some sort of structure. The structure is restrictive of the energy behind it. So they're both equally important, equal energy. It's not that the structure is a weakening of the energy flow. It's that the structure is its own energy that is at play with the flow energy. Yep. So in the terms of the Kabbalah, we can go to the last 2 pages. In terms of the Kabbalah, we've got or, light, which is analogous to the energy flow. And the Gevura energy flow is analogous to kelim, vessels. The letters are vessels that receive and pass through the energy flow of the light. Yes, we're going to, of course, that's just the opening statement.
The light.
Yeah, so we're on page 8, which is the 3rd page of your copies.
Their revelation and concealment.
Yeah.
talking about the restrictions of the like mouth to form words so we can communicate. Does God restrict so we can feel God, understand a little
So we
bit
can
of
feel
God?
ourselves, right? And then we can have a human experience where we have just a little bit of soul, right? We've got a little bit of really, like, I don't want to confuse us, but we basically have a human experience where we feel ourselves and yet we can connect with the divine. So there's obviously energy flow coming through.
Like the rays.
Right? The rays, yet we're within the rays, right? It's instead of, we can't see it as the sun over there and the rays over here, we have to see it as all right here. And that's what makes it so abstract.
And we're connecting within.
Yes, it's all right here. But how do we have this all right here experience at all? Because all right here is the energy of Havaya and the energy of Elohim, the energy of flow, the energy of restriction, limitation, structure. It's all here to allow us to be here. Because without all of this construct, without all of this that Hashem is doing for us to be here, we wouldn't be here, right? Right? And that's this Or and Kelim. Or is light, Kelim are vessels. The vessels are a really nice analogy and more of a visualization, illustration of Gevurah, because they conceal, yet they give form. So here's a vessel, right? It conceals what's inside of it, yet it
Gives form to liquid.
It gives form to the liquid so that I can appreciate the liquid. Because if the water was everywhere, God forbid I would drown in it. God forbid, right? If water didn't have limitations, if water didn't have the rivers that it goes in, the river is a vessel. The riverbed is a vessel, right? Mm-hmm. So if the water didn't have vessels, if the light doesn't have vessels, it's flooding, it's everywhere, and then you don't have the ability to appreciate it. So the vessels are the letters. The vessels are like they have a shape, right? And I have a great example. I'm going to be making cookies with the Judah class this coming week. Aleph-Bet cookies. We're going to use Aleph-Bet cookie cutters, right? So they have the letters are shapes, right? And you can do Aleph-Bet yoga, by the way. There's people who have put the letters into shapes that you can make with your body. Right? It's right. The letters are vessels that receive energy and transmit them and through to the world. And actually, the Alter Rebbe, there's a detail about the letters that there's actually a grouping of letters called final letters. Right? Are you familiar with the final letters, the Sofiot? Mm-hmm. So like there's mem and there's final mem.
At the end of the word, yes.
Yes, and not all letters have them.
No.
But there's 5 letters that have them. Final mem, final nun, final pei, final tzaddik, and final chaf. Yes. Right? And the final letters really embody the Gevurah because they're so final. They're so finite. They have like an end point, the end of a word, right? The conclusion, period, statement, declarative sentence. Just like... So the final letters are actually like the quintessential group of letters that embody this Gevurah, right? But all the letters do. And the letters are coming from the Gevurah from Hashem before the world even exists, before the 4 worlds, which in Kabbalistic terminology, which I cannot claim to be an expert on, is called, it's on the last page, it's called Atik Yomin. It's a state of very, very, very abstract, godly energy before the 4 worlds are created, yet there's some sort of imagination of creation. It's like the OG Gevurah. Let's call it that. All right? And here you have on the last page, it is printed out, the root of the 5 letters, Mem, Nun, Tzadik, Pei, Chaf. And and I'm reading in the English on the last page, since they represent the 5 degrees of Gevurah, the 5 restraining forces that divide and separate the breath and the voice in the 5 organs of speech, thus enabling the 22 letters to be formed. And the 5 levels of Gevurah are coming from this OG Gevurah from Atik Yomin. And that's how this chapter concludes.
What is it?
Yeah, so what is it? I'll tie it up with a bow, for us, so we can come away with an understanding. Okay? So the understanding of this chapter is that the way that the how, remember this whole book is about the how of how we exist. If we are really just godly energy, constantly being flowed out, is because along with the godly energy flowing out is also a godly energy that restricts. And this restrictive energy is there to allow us to have an identity. And we're going to continue to unpack this phenomenon in the next 2 chapters and then continuing throughout the whole book. Next we get to introduce Tiferet, which is fun. But yeah, I would say that would be this chapter. This chapter is about the how is through the Gevura. And the Gevura is the Tzimtzum, the constriction.
So it's a balance between energy flowing.
There's this energy and there's
a
this
little
energy.
bit of-
There's and there is one last thing in the last chapter that illustrates this. This Gevura, this OG Gevura, has a nickname in the Zohar, which we were talked about in the beginning of class with the Aramaic, right? And it's an Aramaic word called Butsina Dekardunita. It's right in the middle of the last page. Butsina Dekardunita, which means the candle. Listen to this: the candle of darkness. What an oxymoron, right?
Right.
But how expressive is that to express what we're talking about? That the darkness isn't just the absence of light; it's an actual energy. It's its own energy in its own right. We've got light and we've got shadows. In art, if you only have light, you don't have a painting. You need the shadows too. They're just as important. So we've got the candle of light, our chesed, and our havaya, name of Hashem, and our energy flow. And then we've got our candle of darkness, our gevura, our Elohim. And they both work Hashem uses them both to create our reality. More next week.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Can you just do the one after?
What do you mean by that?